today's episode, we focus on not letting perfect become the enemy of being good, how to find those who are intrinsically motivated in recruiting, and lastly, our responsibility as coaches to help our young people. And joining me to discuss all of those things is the Runningbacks Coach at Bowdoin College, Kevin Loney. Kevin, it's great to have you here.
Coach, great to have you. Good to be here. It's an honor. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I listen all the time. So it's a huge honor. Thank you so much.
Coach, we're going to dig into it and get to the beginning of this for you. As far as the why and exactly when that happened for you that you wanted to become a football coach.
Yeah. So I went to high school in Connecticut, Xavier High School, Middletown, Connecticut. Played for a great high school coach named Tony Jascott. I was actually a senior on his final team. Had a great experience playing for him. We were not the program we wanted to be, but there were some things as a young player that I saw. I loved the way that he coached. There's some things that I saw that were always interesting. And one of the things that we talked about as a team all the time was, don't make excuses and be accountable. And then you'd see some times where people around our program would not do that stuff. And so that always clicks with you. And what it stuck with me over the years, I was talking to one of the guys that I played with and ended up coaching in that program when I first got into coaching was our players, they hear what we say and they see what we do, and we're the model. We have to be the model. So that for me was a big thing was, okay, if I wanted to be a high school teacher. That was what I wanted to do, coming out of high school, out of college. And so to go back and coach my high schools. And the irony was I couldn't do it because for whatever reasons. But I got into coaching at the end of my senior year of high school. The cool part was Connecticut is really the only state in the Northeast that actually has spring football as an option. They still do. And so I got to coach spring football with the new head coach, a guy named Tim Feshler, who is a high school coach in the state still. He actually is part of the National Football Foundation up there in Connecticut, one of the chapters there. And he gave me an opportunity to help out. And so I would do over the summers. I then went to Dickinson College and played for Darwin Bro for a couple of years. My junior and senior year I was on the team. My sophomore year I helped out as a kind of a manager after an injury. But I'd go home and help break down film. I'd help run the strength program, all that kind of stuff. But I got a chance to really get into it, the nitty gritty of it, and I fell in love with it. And I knew that's what I wanted to do.
So early on in your career, you're a GA. You have some great opportunities there. As you look through those early years, who really were your mentors, and what were some of the key lessons that you took away that really have become part of who you are as a coach now? Yeah,
for sure. So, like you said, I had a lot of really interesting experiences. I worked with some guys early on in my career. It's funny, I look back at some of our staffs that I was on. So my first college job was at Norwich University. I worked for a guy that I played for in college named Mike Esalonia. But on our staff, on that staff we had the guy Bob Chesney, Bob, who's the head coach at Holy Cross. Bob and I were actually college teammates. His D coordinator, Scott James, we were all on the same staff together. And we stayed in close contact, obviously, Bob and I, especially because, obviously we were actually in a lot of classes together as well, same major, which is hilarious. And from there, I went to Wesleyan, worked with some guys there. John Rava, who's actually not coaching football anymore. He's actually the lacrosse coach at Wesleyan. This is the way John carried himself, just his personality. Nothing ever really irked him. He always kept things in perspective. That was a great way to kind of go through things. And Frank Hauser, who's our head coach at the time, Frank is still in the NESCAC right now. He's the offensive coordinator at Tufts. And Frank always understood just the way that the thing to make sure things operated and to be as organized as humanly possible. And that was a great experience as well. And then leaving there, going to kind of what changed my coaching career, honestly, was a guy named Tim Weaver. Weave is the defensive coordinator now at Brown. And this is something that doesn't ever happen, but he did it. He gave a guy who he didn't know an opportunity to be a coordinator, which never happens in college football. And so I sent my resume out for a job. He took the defensive coordinator. He took the head job at Bowdoin College in West Virginia. Looking for a young coach, and I went out there, I interviewed, and go figure, he offered me an opportunity to be his defensive coordinator. And I learned the Tampa 2 defense from Tim, and learned really how to be a lot more situational football, situational awareness. And that was an amazing thing for me from an X's and O standpoint. And we really began to work on turning a program around. And really in one year's time, we went from, I think they had 3 wins in 3 previous years. We won 4 games in our first year there. And Bethany was kind of a unique place. And in fact, the head coach there now, Bill Garvey, was our offensive coordinator. Bill's an awesome guy. There's a bunch of guys that are still around that program that were part of that staff back in 2006. And they're doing a great job, you know. And it was pretty cool to kind of watch just how the dynamic of how we operated as a staff, just the organization, but as how we work together as coordinators, just that, you know, playing complementary football, just even through spring practice, making sure that, hey, here are all the things we got to make sure we deal with from a situational football standpoint, and let's make sure we hit all of these topics through our 16 spring practices, through the preseason, so that when you get into a game scenario, it's not the first time you hit those things. And honestly, I had never done any of that before. Even if we did, it never clicked in my head that way. And so, like, to this day, that's stuff that I always look at when I'm coaching my players and talking about situational awareness, situational football situations. I mean, even in like my meeting time with my guys, we'll take 5 minutes and go over, hey, let's hit this situation. Let's talk about this scenario, this situation, so that when it happens in a game, it's not the first time they've seen it. And so I think that's a really big thing that's been good for me. And then from there, you know, Tim actually, he'd worked with a guy who then was working at Notre Dame, and that's how I ended up getting the Notre Dame situation. And then we get situational football on steroids, because obviously Coach Weiss had just come from the Patriots. And so, and if you're working with Coach Belichick, that's all they do with situational awareness stuff. And so we spent a lot of time on that, and it was great.
So I know now you're in a running backs role, but, you know, prior to this, you know, it's been a lot on the defensive side of the ball, and you also had the opportunity to be the head coach. And looking at, you know, your experiences along the way, again, you learn and you grow. What have been some of the biggest things in your development as you've progressed through these different stages of your career?
Yeah, I think, you know, you're never, you don't know what you don't know. It's funny, Trevor Moawad, if you read his book, It Takes What It Takes, they talk about the 4 stages of competence, right? There's like that, you know, unconsciously incompetent, you don't know what you don't know. And there's a lot that when I became a head coach, I did not know. I was not ready to be a head coach. And it showed my first couple of years, and started beginning to kind of figure some things out along the way. And then, you know, thankfully, hopefully you surround yourself with good people. And you hope you learn that's one of the things I think is you put your staff together. You make sure you have good people who know more than you about whatever they're doing, and that you can really count on, that you can really trust. Don't think you can do it all yourself because you can't. Know that when you're a head coach, you probably are not going to do nearly as much, especially if you think of a program where you don't have a lot of resources. You're not going to be able to do as much football as you want to, because you're dealing with a lot of other stuff. And you know, one of the challenges my 3 years at Nichols, I had a different D-line coach for all 3 seasons that I was there, and all 3 guys were part-time guys. So probably like the highlight of my day for 3 years was I basically ran the D-line meetings, and so that was probably like the highlight of my day for 3 years, because those guys, you know, during training camp couldn't get practice because of the schedule sometimes. So I take that time and I do that stuff. Yeah, and other than that, you're putting out fires. You know, you're not really getting to do all the X's and O's that you were doing as a coordinator, as a position coach. And you know, quite honestly, I burnt out. If you forget sometimes, you know, why you're doing what you're doing. And because you're sitting there, you're dealing with this, and this kid's doing this in the classroom, this kid's doing this, and financial aid this, financial aid that, whatever it's going to be, admissions this, and it's like, okay, you know, take that giant step backwards to realize, okay, why are we doing this? What's going on? What's really important? You know, are we doing what's right for the kids? Because that's the most important piece. If you don't get to go back and realize what's your why piece, right? Once you can get back to figuring all of those bits and pieces out, things get a lot easier. Recognizing coach speak, what can you actually control? We had a team meeting last night, and Coach Hammer, our head coach, he talked about, you know, your one word focus. What's your one word? His thing is, hey, his focus is going to be on just focusing on what he can control, and it is so. It's such a truism, you know, and it seems like such a simple thing, but we actually have to do it as coaches, because we want to take on the world, but hey, just focusing on what you can control. And I didn't learn that until it was too late as a head coach, and I do it now until it's so much easier.
Yeah, I can relate to that idea of, you know, you get into that head coaching position, you work so hard for it, and so for me, it was a point in my career. I was a head high school coach for 8 years, and except for one place, some really tough programs that were rebuilders and required a lot of attention. And, you know, I found myself in a situation then when I got to go to the college level at Bowdoin College and just be the quarterback's coach. And that was only for 1 year, and I got promoted the next year to coordinator. Mm-hmm. But I can say that year, in stepping back and being able to just focus on one position, not worry about the whole program, actually not worry about, you know, the whole game plan, those kinds of things, and just focus on coaching my guys was so refreshing. Like it rejuvenated where I was at, rejuvenated my career.
Right. So here's what happened to me. So we get let go at Nichols, and I am just sitting around like, I don't know what I'm going to do, don't know what I'm going to do. And then a high school in my conference in Connecticut, West Haven High School. And people in Connecticut, you know, it's a program that has been a powerhouse for a long time. Head coach at the time had been the winningest head coach in the state of Connecticut. He's getting ready to retire. Nobody knew it. And again, Ed McCarthy. And Ed had been around for a long, long time. I'd recruited his high school forever. And so he's looking for a defensive coordinator. The guy who was there is the guy who I'd known. I actually tried to recruit out of high school. He ended up being a Division I player and all kind of stuff. But, so I go down and I meet with them. And the one thing I knew about the program was their kids loved to play football. And so, you know, we sit down and talked about it. And, you know what? I'd give it a shot. You know, it wasn't you're not doing it for the money. It wasn't a great, but the great thing was it was a bunch of really good kids who loved football. And after 3 years of, you know, pulling teeth and trying to find a nucleus of guys who really cared about football, literally 2 days into spring football, like a junior linebacker walks up in the middle of school with his coach. He goes, "When can you find time to watch some film and get on the board and talk?" And I'm like, holy cow. I spent 3 years, the last year, trying to get kids to do that. And here's a kid in high school asking for it. And all of a sudden, like, you're just, like you said, you're just refreshed. And so I just ran the defense for a year and just like, okay, you felt just so good. You have to worry about all your stuff. Just relax and have fun and just go back to doing what you do. And then when I got to Bowdoin the next fall, really next spring, you get to sit around this, be around the guys. And the thing I was telling some other guys the other day is, I can't wait for this COVID thing to be over, because I really do miss being around our guys and just going and sitting in the dining hall and not even hang out with them as much, as just watching them interact with each other. Because that to me is one of the coolest things about, college football, is seeing these guys just be around each other, because they are a great group of guys to be around. And that's the thing that keeps coming back. So all the stuff you deal with on a day-to-day basis, all the meetings and the trainings and all of those stuff, the refreshing part is when your guys are hanging out together and just being themselves and being great teammates, and then after a hard workout, or after a tough practice, or after they get done winning a game, hanging out at post-game tailgate with parents, whatever. And that's the thing that keeps coming back. That's what you want. So.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I know the NESCAC, from having some guys I coach with being there now, definitely a unique situation. High academic schools. You're looking for a certain type of guy in recruiting. You're faced with, everybody right now is on the phones and not able to get off campus. But that's other than the summer getting to camps, that's kind of the normal mode of operation there in the NESCAC. That you guys, you're not out at high schools all year long getting to know these kids. So the challenge in recruiting, whether you're at Bowdoin or in the NESCAC, or whatever division in the country, has this unique thing that they have to have a certain kind of guy that's going to fit in their program, that's going to fit in their school. You guys obviously have extremely high academic standards, which definitely narrows that pool. But ultimately, you want to find that guy for you who is intrinsically motivated, who is going to do things without having to be to be pushed, to be monitored, et cetera. And I think we all want that in our program. For you, what's the key to finding that type of kid?
Yeah, I think honestly, it starts with, we invest a lot of time asking high school coaches about the weight room, because if anybody looks at Bowdoin's record over the last number of years, it's nothing. You can't hide from it. It is what it is. And no one in the conference is getting worse. Trinity's not getting worse anytime soon. Williams Amherst's not getting worse anytime soon. So for us to close the distance, the place that we feel we have to make our headway is going to have to be in the weight room. Schemes are schemes. It's gonna come down to us being physically better, right? More durable, strong, bigger, faster, stronger, so that when we do the stuff we do, we can be more explosive as individual players, as a team. So the weight room is going to be our critical piece. And so guys who are finding ways in the weight room, who's the kid that found a way during COVID to get to make his own gym, or to get to the gym somehow, that found an open gym, or who's that kid? That's the kid we want. And before that, we were saying, hey, coaches, who's your guy that, that's knocking on the door to get in the weight room? Who's the kid who's doing things the right way there? Who's pulling guys in the weight room, and who's doing? That's the kind of kid we're looking for, because that stuff is it's contagious, it's addictive. So the kid's not going to all of a sudden stop doing that stuff, right? Those are the guys that and then if he does that and he's passionate about it, it's only going to add to it, because that's what we believe in. And you're going to be around a bunch of guys like that when you come here anyways. So the more kids like that we have, the better off we're going to be. And so that's a big part of it. And then, as we'll talk to teachers too. We'll talk to people, whoever, I go so far sometimes as to talk to guidance counselors. I'll talk to people. I still will call the front office sometimes and say, even the things we used to do, like when I used to go into high schools or other schools, hey, ask the secretary at the front desk. Right. Ask the, you can still ask those questions. Nothing stops you from doing that stuff, doing the research. And the thing now, you have the time to do it. So you make the effort, and because why not? And then we invest a lot of time with the kids that we're talking to about, how are they handling all of this COVID stuff? How the family's handling it? How are they handling, remote learning? Because those things some kids are struggling with it. Some kids are different, and we're doing a lot with and everyone's doing this, doing stuff on Zoom and FaceTime and all that. And really getting a feel for how kids are reacting and responding to all this stuff, because each kid's different, and who's resilient, who's going to be, who can be a little bit, who's got the mental toughness, component to it, and who can respond. And I think it's helping. And obviously, once they, the kids, like the classes, been able to put together, we're knocking on wood, we feel good about it, and hopefully we can keep do it again.
A lot of times, and I'm sure you hear this in recruiting, you hear it in coaching, you hear it in parenting, the idea of kids these days. And before you got going, you brought up, and you see it out there, that I think it was a quote from like one of the Greek philosophers, that has held true over time. Now, all the things that they may be into that are different. Of course, we didn't have social media growing up or anything like that, but there were other things, right? There's ultimately just something that the previous generation didn't see, wasn't part of their lives, and you think that is different. But this has been true over time.
Absolutely.
What's your thoughts just on that kind of mentality, but also the things that we have to be responsible for as coaches, as people who are helping bring them up?
Yeah, for sure. And here's a story I'll tell you, because I think you were at Overwood, I believe, when I first met.
Yes.
And I will tell you here, and I'll kind of answer the question by giving you a story. So I was the recruiting coordinator at Wesleyan the 3 years that I was there. And my last year there, we were recruiting a kid whose parents worked in Hollywood. And like no one that you wouldn't know the names, but they're kind of big wigs, and like they were working on like some syndicated TV shows and all that kind of stuff. And the way that we were doing our recruiting at the time, they would do overnights, and you would end your recruiting visit with a exit interview with the head coach, and that's where you would kind of wrap up all your final questions and get if you were a kid who were going to support, you would get your support offer, or so on and so forth. And he's the kid we were going to support. And I remember that the Sunday, the kid walked out of the meeting before the meeting was over. He was furious, and he walked up to his coach, just get me out, get me away from my parents. I'm coming to Wesleyan. Just get me away from my parents. And he was furious. I was like, what's going on? He goes, they're in there complaining to coach about money. Because we were rich, and they're complaining about money. This is a high school kid. Now, I don't know if they're rich or not rich, but on paper it looks like they're rich because they're working in Hollywood. They're we all think, hey, if you're in Hollywood, you're a syndicated TV show. It looks great. But as far as he knew, whatever. So I'll take him at his word. And what's clicked in my head over the years is that kid's gonna bring whatever baggage he's got at home to campus. And what I realized is, the clientele, the people who, the kids of privilege, they're coming to schools like Overland, like Bowdoin. And if they play sports, they're bringing their baggage with them. And so all these kids, they didn't ask for the baggage. All right. So they got it. And so for them to be at their best, for them to play their best, to be the best student, best citizen they can be, best athlete they can be, we're going to have to help them. That's our responsibility. We can't throw them away and say, well, hey, we'll go recruit another kid. It doesn't work that way. We recruited this kid. He or she, that's our kid. If we take over a program, they're our kid. It's kind of like the Mac Brown rule. Mac Brown could have walked in North Carolina and said, you know what, we didn't recruit any of these guys, forget them. Well, no. There are players now. And hey, this is how we're going to do things. And these are our standards. Meet them. And we're going to help you meet them. We'll teach you what it's going to take. And then we go from there. And that's the way it's got to, I think that's the way it has to be. And we're the educators, we're the adults, we're the educators. So let's educate. Let's teach. And let's build relationships. One of our coaches, Nate Scola, is our new linebackers coach, and he talks all the time about Jeff Vick's book 3D coaching, and that's, I think, to me, that's a big part of it, right? It's about it's the whole being transformational coaches, really getting people to buy into the idea of hey, we're in this for the whole person. Whatever it's going to take to get you to be your best self. Because as much as we love this game, it's going to end. You know, I've been lucky enough to coach some guys who are in the NFL. One of my former players is coaching the Buffalo Bills. You know, football, and he was an undrafted free agent, played 9 years in the league with the same team, which is unheard of, and then he's now coaching, and he was, you know, chance to go play for the Super Bowl, hopefully, you know, and but football is going to end at some point. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? We're going to coach you. We'll teach you in every single phase in a way that, you know, the teacher in the calculus class can't. You know, and we can reach these kids in a different way. So let's do it. And that's our obligation. That's our responsibility. And especially because we brought them to campus more often than not. And that's the other challenge at the college level is, you know, kids aren't going to have the relationship with the professor necessarily that they have with their coach. That's the luxury of being a college athlete. And being even at the high school level, you're with those kids a lot less than you want to be sometimes. But they're vulnerable. They fail around you as coaches more than they do around their teachers. And so that's a vulnerable spot for them to be in. And it's okay for us to be vulnerable with them as well and show them what it's like, that failure is okay and that it's just feedback and all that kind of stuff. So,
Coach, I know you were part of just a tremendous effort in helping a great cause and Lawrence First and Goal Clinic. Typically that's a camp that's been run every year and coaches go out and donate their time. Well, we had to kind of flip our thinking and come up with some new ways. And so we were able to put together just a tremendous clinic, and your clinic talk continuing to benefit Lawrence as it's been produced to a course on CoachTube, and sales of that again going to Lawrence First and Goal, which benefits pediatric brain tumor research and cancer services. And you talked about keeping it simple, Inside Zone and RPOs. For our listeners out there who weren't at the clinic, what will they see in this clinic talk on CoachTube? Yeah,
so just basically I talked about kind of our situation where, you know, our staff, you know, our offensive staff, our head coach came into Bowdoin with only 17 practices to install an offense and defense. And so our philosophy of, hey, how do we get something to build confidence for our kids, to give them a chance to go out and play football and be confident to play as fast as possible and eliminate as much thinking as possible. So simple rules, simple philosophy, and also understanding what our personnel strengths were and what our personnel question marks were. I would say we can see our question marks were. So, you know, we had a really good tailback. And as they watch the clinic tape, they'll see we had a kid, number 6, Nate Richam, who phenomenal athlete, phenomenal young man as well. So we got him. We wanted to feed him the rock a ton. And so Inside Zone was a natural way to do it. It was a really good back. And so you see us try to find ways to get him the ball as many ways as creatively as possible, and then, you know, throw some RPOs off of that just to get the ball down the field a little bit, because everyone's going to focus on him, because we knew that they knew he was the offense. And he still ran for almost 1,000 yards in a 9-game season, and caught the ball a bunch as well. And it was able to give us some opportunities offensively that we probably would not have had if we were a little more complicated schematically. So hopefully it's simple enough for everybody to understand it, and if they want to ask questions and whatever, like I said, you know, one of the interesting things for us, for me, is I don't have any running backs on campus this spring, so I've got a lot of time in my hands to talk ball, and we're going to practice the guys we do have and go from there. But on the side note, you know, I've been part of Lawrence First and Goal for a really long time. I only missed a handful of camps. I love John and Marianne and Lauren. They do it's an amazing family and amazing cause, and I'm glad to be part of it. I'm glad I could help out this year. And anything to help, I will drop whatever I'm doing.
Coach, as with all NESCAC schools, you guys recruit nationally. What areas are you responsible for? So for those guys out there who have that high academic kid who'd be a good fit for Bowdoin, what areas do you recruit?
Definitely, yeah. So we actually just shuffled some around this year. So I have Connecticut, I have Minnesota, I have the DMV, which I just took over this year. I have Northern California, I have DeKalb County in Georgia. I have basically the Orlando area of Florida, and that's about where. And then any running backs that are kind of out of the region as well, they're out there a little bit.
And the best way for coaches to connect with you?
I'm on Twitter, Coach K.A. Loney. Or if you want to email me, KLONEY at Bowdoin, BOWDOIN.edu. Those are the two best ways to get a hold of me.
Kevin, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk ball with us here on the podcast, and thanks for all you've done for Lawrence and for the game as well.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. God bless everybody. Be safe, all right? Take care of business, and let's go to the game.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Please, if you are enjoying the podcast, head over to iTunes or Spotify and click 5-star for rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It really helps the podcast. Check out our new home for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. That's at coachandcoordinator.com. And follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.